Hello.
3, 2, shh.
One, two, three.
Oh,
Break.
3, 2, 1. I don't know why I do this podcast anymore. I guess I just love the pain and the thrill of it. Having this inner monologue, before starting a story. It really sets the mood and atmosphere just right. But maybe I should just stop talking and just start shooting. Or just start talking again, because this is a podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of First Dates with Moire. Devin King sadly will not be able to make it tonight, but, our condolences, buddy. We hope you enjoyed the film nonetheless. So, in his place for a discussion on Frank Miller's cinematic legacies and blunders, I am joined by two guests tonight. Our first guest is a American filmmaker, Stephen Beason. Stephen Beason, introduce yourself and what projects
Hey,
you're
how's it
working on.
going? I'm Stephen Beason. I'm an American filmmaker.
Filthy capitalist.
I know, right? No, yes. No, I mean, I'm on Twitter. You can find me at BMovieMagic. Same thing on Instagram. You can find my last short film, Hopeless Romantic, on YouTube. And also, if you're in the mood to actually see my beautifully handsome face while I review a movie, you can check out Tavern Talk, my initial reaction. They had me on last Thursday. I was there discussing the new A24 Bodies, 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 which is surprisingly really good.
I saw it yesterday. It was good.
Yeah. So you can hear my thoughts there, see me talk about that. Yeah, I'm out there. There's enough Stephen Beason to go around.
Nice. And on the other corner, we have Mr. Shapiro, not Ben Shapiro, the better Shapiro, Nathan Shapiro. What do you
We don't
introduce
talk
yourself?
about we don't talk about cousin Ben.
Yeah, we don't talk about your cousin.
He's actually okay. No, I'm glad you brought this up because
Oh, boy.
who's the chick who was in Matilda?
What the little
is
girl?
her? Yeah, she played the little girl. What is her name?
I'm not too sure. Let me look it up real quick. Matilda.
Mara Wilson.
Yes, that's it.
That is literally Ben Shapiro's cousin. I read this recently.
Wow.
And she doesn't talk about him at all. But anyway.
Well, can't say I blame her. Sorry, Nathan. Introduce yourself.
What's up? My name is Nathan Shapiro. I am a lot of things, I guess. I'm an actor. I'm a musician. Part-time filmmaker. I am known as King Knight, the frontman for the LA metal band Nox Sinister, and I'm also an avid comic book fan. Have been since I was a kid.
Nice. So you're both comic book fans.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I'm staring at an Uncanny X-Men omnibus right now that I bought a couple of weeks ago that I still have yet to crack into, but it's there.
Nice. And so you guys read a lot of comics. I'm assuming a lot of Frank Miller comics. Tell me about your experiences with Frank Miller. Like, what was the first comic you read from him? How much do you know about him? How much do you admire him? How much do you hate him? Lay it out for us.
He certainly changed the face of comics in the '80s with his Daredevil Daredevil run, and then of course Dark Knight Returns, and his work has been adapted. Into many films. I just think that he's got a very unique style. It's very, very gritty. It's very much his own, and I've seen a number of interviews with him. I actually went to a convention in LA where he did a little panel, and the interviewer was just asking the dumbest fucking questions. It was so stupid, but I very much enjoy Frank Miller's voice, and his art style is very interesting too. It's very gritty. It's not clean. It's very how do I put this? It's very
stark.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of angular. There's a lot of really weird, in a good way, but there's a lot of kind of jagged sort of edge. It's like he's a very harsh writer, and I guess that translates to his art as well. And a lot of people say he's a bad artist, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think he
Really?
has a very specific way of trying to portray certain stories.
Really?
So
Like, I love his artwork.
yeah, no. So here's kind of my experience. I, much like Nate, was very interested in comics as at a young age. I like that was kind of what I wanted to do before I started pursuing film. Was like I could write comic books. And that was, I mean, I was just a massive fan. Frank Miller was always one of those guys that I feel like I think by the time I was 13, he had kind of taken a turn for maybe the worst in a lot of ways, because when I was growing up, like I knew him as the all-star Batman and Robin guy. Like,
Oh, I forgot about All Star Batman and
yeah,
Robin.
Not a good time
where
to get into
you
him.
have, yeah. Anyway, but no, I mean, going back before I was a teen, like in his heyday, he really was at the forefront and like changed the landscape of comics for better or worse. I think he was one of the very first people that helped push comics in the direction that they could be taken seriously, as an art form, specifically superhero comics, because his work on Daredevil, his work on Batman and Superman with like the Dark Knight Returns, I think it was.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Like I remember watching a documentary about comics, and they were introducing like Frank Miller and the role that he played, and it was like this is the guy who broke up the friendship between Superman and Batman. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think he's legendary for better or worse. I think he has really been this kind of like mammoth figure in comics for a long time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't actually read the Sin City graphic novels, haven't read any of Frank Miller's stuff. I've been meaning to. It's on my list. There's so many graphic novels and comic books that are on my list. It's not even funny. But, like, I particularly love his artwork, and I kind of always viewed him as, like, the edgy Pete Doctor, just in the sense that he, like, uses, like, weird shapes and weird expressions to kind of like exaggerate his characters and get a point across just from the character designs alone. So that's one aspect I kind of find fascinating about his work. He's a bit of a loon, bit out there. I think after the success of the first Sin City, he definitely let the success get to his head. We'll address that with the spirit, but you know what? You kind of have to be crazy to make ambitious works of art like he does. You kind of have to be crazy to make a Sin
I
City.
I
every
agree with that though. Yeah.
every legendary comic creator has their heyday and has a little bit of a downfall. I hope I'm not offending any fans of Rob Liefeld, but Rob Liefeld certainly had his period when he was, when he was writing and drawing in the '90s, and since then, he's kind of struggled to capture, to capture the comic book zeitgeist since. But Frank Miller, I think is a writer artist who always remains relevant because he reshaped the way that we view Batman. And actually, when I was in college, I minored in comics and cartoon studies when I was in college, and I took a superheroes course with legendary Professor Ben Saunders, who is currently curating the Spider-Man exhibit at the Comic-Con Museum in San Diego, and is the it has been behind the publishing of the Penguin Classic collected editions for Marvel Comics. But I did my thesis on Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller's Batman was one of the staples of my thesis, which was looking at Batman through monster theory. Which there is such a thing as monster theory. I learned it one of my other classes. If I told you about all the classes I took in college, you would doubt the fact that I went to college at all. But Frank Miller uses bits of the classic monster theory to construct Batman and the Dark Knight Returns, and I wrote a bit of a paper on that.
Nice.
Very interesting.
Did you write any papers? Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, as far as, Nate, what you were talking about with like every comic book writer sort of has their heyday and then they kind of struggle to kind of keep mainstream. Like, I'd argue that's really any art form, like that's true of filmmakers in a way too. Like, everyone has their like time in the sun, and then it's like, this guy's not quite, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's true with almost any art form.
That's true.
Yeah, no, totally.
Everybody has their high periods. There's nothing exactly wrong with that, but it seems to always disappoint people nonetheless. Like, I don't know why people are even surprised.
Sure, and I mean, like I said, like, All-Star Batman and Robin was definitely a low point. I think there was another comic that he did called Holy Terror, which definitely
subtle
rubbed some people the wrong.
Yeah, that was rough.
Oh, yeah.
Just edgy for the sake of being edgy.
Well, do you want to explain this, or should I?
Go ahead.
Are we gonna have to talk? Is this how this is gonna work?
So it was essentially, it was like a superhero.
Very Islamophobic superhero.
Yes, yeah. I think it's worth noting, which it doesn't excuse what he did, but like I think he knew people that passed away in 9/11, and he took or at least he was from that area of New York. I don't know, but he decided to write a story about an edgy sort of Batman character who just goes around indiscriminately murdering terrorists. And
oh boy, I'm sure that aged well.
It was not very culturally sensitive, but shall we say. But no, I mean, you look at even his work on Daredevil was like, holy shit, like that's how Daredevil is today, is because of what he did. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like for better or worse, this guy is, probably on the Mount Rushmore of like the most important figures in comic book history.
Yeah.
Speaking of, comic books and comic book movies, we have 3 movies based off of comic books and graphic novels tonight. Well, one of them is half based off a graphic novel. We'll get into more details on that later. First and foremost, Sin City, the 2005 Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, and Frank Miller classic. Nathan, take it away.
Sin City, one of my favorite movies of all time, actually, is a 2005 action film noir adapting many of the popular stories from Frank Miller's Sin City graphic novels. It stars Mickey Rourke, Bruce Willis, Clive Owen, Benicio del Toro, Jamie King, Josh Hartnett. It's fantastic. I think that it is probably one of the best comic book movie adaptations of all time. It was very successful upon its release, and let's get into it.
Well, what's it about?
Well, it is it's an anthology movie.
You cut out there.
Big Fat Kill and That Yellow Bastard, which all feature very morally questionable protagonists, and very.
Nate, when you're talking about morally ambiguous, would you say there were shades of gray?
You suck.
Yeah.
I hate you. Please continue.
I'm sorry. I tried. Yeah, so it is kind of interlocking sort of and it's an anthology, but a lot of these characters' stories kind of
They
tie into each
intersect.
other.
Marv kind of worms his way into every single Sin City story, whether it's for like 2 minutes or a significant chunk of it. But it's consider it a string of loosely related wacky misadventures,
Yes, I
One
would
long
I would
bad
agree with that.
to put it lightly.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
The no good, very bad day of Clive Owen, Bruce Willis, and Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
It's based off of 3 different graphic novels. The Yellow
Yes.
Bastard.
Yellow Bastard, The Hard Goodbye, and The Big Fat Kill.
Yeah, that's it. And
There's also
sorry.
it's kind of bookended by there's another comic book that ties into this, and I forget the name of that, but it's
I think it's The Customer Is Always Right.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
the
One little
Hitman
segment.
character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like opening and closing. By the way, that's a great like opener just to like set the tone of the story. Like, yeah, it's not gonna be what you expect. There's gonna be a lot of death. There's gonna be a lot of sex. There's gonna be like subversions of expectations. Like all just perfectly set up in like that opening. And he's basically a male femme fatale. I found that kind of interesting. It's like, huh, that wasn't quite what I expected. Watching this
Well,
movie again, yeah, go on.
He's a playboy James Bond kind of guy. I mean,
That fits. He definitely
Yeah.
presents himself as such. Yeah, man, Mattel. There you go.
man, Mattel.
Man,
Mattel.
we just coined a new phrase here.
Yep,
ladies and
don't
gentlemen.
steal it. Copyright is $50 and a copy of Sin City so I can read it. Watching this movie, I
Absolutely.
realized I've only ever seen certain segments before, but I've never watched like the full movie in one sitting, and it's still great. I liked it a lot. I think the best part about it is that it doesn't, as serious as it may seem, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like there's still a lot of dark humor. There's still a lot of like tongue-in-cheek, wink-wink, nudge moments without being ridiculous about it. And I think that's good because this film would not work at all for me if it wasn't at least like a little bit goofy and over the top. But just that vibe to it is makes the film extremely entertaining and unique, and it's over 2 hours long, and I gotta say it really does not feel like it's over 2 hours long.
It's really well paced,
Yeah.
especially when you count the fact that it has several different stories in it.
Exactly, and like the stories are like differently paced, like one has more action than the other, but it somehow just all comes together so well. And I have my gripes with the movie, like there's some dated visual effects and some questionable performances, but you can't really be mad at a film like this for too long. It's just oozing with style, oozing with passion, and it's just so much fun to watch. Like I had a
It's
blast watching it again.
it's so well stylized. I absolutely love the visual language in this film. And I think when you're adapting a comic book, visual language, especially a comic book as stylized as the Sin City comic is, visual language comes into question when you as a filmmaker have to wonder, how am I going to translate the visual language of the comic into the visual language of the film? And I think with a lot of comic book movies these days, we don't really seem to think about it that much anymore. I mean, I think that they actually did an excellent job with Matt Reeves' Batman movie. That is one of the recent comic book movies that's come out that I think has actually put thought into visual language and put thought into trying to adapt the look, the feel, the vibe of a comic book into a film. I don't think Marvel puts that much thought into it.
Yeah,
I think
it's all like factory produced, very bland.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the difference is Marvel is sort of like a conveyor belt. They're pushing stuff out. It's more content based. And I feel like this was made by people who it's not just so much that they wanted to tell a good, comic book story, but they wanted to tell a good Sin City story. Like, this is coming from people who are obviously massive fans of the source material,
Mm-hmm.
and you can feel that passion throughout the whole thing. Like,
Absolutely.
I never once got the feeling that this was a movie that was done for a paycheck, which
Yeah.
you could say about
No.
a lot of.
Yeah, a lot of.
Well,
Go on.
I just feel like I just feel like in the late 90s to early 2000s there was a lot more care that was put into comic book adaptations because they weren't being churned
Yeah,
out
there was a lot more
on
pressure.
an alarming scale. I think that when they set out to do this, when they set out to do a Sin City movie, they were taking a property that had its own cult following, that had its own fan base, but that wasn't it wasn't in like it wasn't in anticipation. It wasn't it wasn't trying to be the a follow up to something or a continuation of something. They took their
Well,
time with this.
no, it wasn't a Sin City like cinematic universe. You know, there's no like, there's no post credit scene.
Oh
Like,
no.
I mean, this is like no, and I mean, kind of going back to like the technical elements. Like 99% of this, I think, was shot on green screen.
Yeah, there's only 4
Yeah,
sets
most
in the
yeah.
entire movie. Like 2 apartment buildings, the hospital, and I think like somebody's like the
And
interior of a car, and that's it.
no,
That's
and
it.
I'm gonna say, I mean, like as far as a movie that came out in 2005, I'd argue this film has aged spectacularly.
So well. Like there's a few
Yeah.
dated elements to it, but I can't even really be mad at it because even the dated elements are like weirdly charming. In a way, it's like, it's kind of
No,
cute
for
watching
sure.
people pretend to sneak around and stuff like that, and it kind of helps.
Well,
Like, it fits that.
I
It looks
no,
dumb,
it
but
does.
it kind of looks dumb in the comic book, so it kind of weirdly works in a way. Even at
For
its
It also
worst,
yeah.
I was still
it
smiling.
looks surprisingly good for having been filmed on a green screen and a green screen only, you
I
know?
know. Like there were certain scenes where it was actually like kind of hard to tell. Like apparently like the basement wasn't green screen. I'm just like that looks real. Like that looks surprisingly like decently real. Like I'm surprised like that was all CGI. And something we haven't even addressed yet, like think about what kind of comic book movies came around this time. Like any movie that tried to go for the comic book look like failed spectacularly. Like Ang Lee's
Uh,
Hulk, for example,
Ang
like
Lee's
that
Hulk,
really
I
tried
was
to mimic
yeah,
that. Go on.
I was gonna bring up Ang Lee's Hulk because they tried to
Oh
do the whole
yeah,
panels thing and
and
it
it
just
looks
didn't.
like
it's
shit.
so dumb.
And Spider-Man, like
It's awful.
like Spider-Man, people love Spider-Man, but it's Spider-Man. It's just like a basic movie. This was the first film because we didn't have movies like Spider-Verse. We didn't have movie like shows like Arcane or anything along those lines to have like that perfect comic booky look and feel to it. This was the first film to like really
I would
embrace that look with a warm hug, and especially for the time, like that was groundbreaking shit back then. Which is another reason
I
I
would
can't really be mad at
argue
it. Like it's so
no,
ambitious.
I would argue the only thing that I can think of that comes close in terms of this era was Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, which came out like a year
A
before
little bit,
this.
but I'm
Yeah.
saying like that was
And I
shot like a
think,
normal movie. Is my kind of
well,
thing.
I mean, it's more shot like a Del Toro kind of film,
Oh
but
yeah,
I think that's the only thing that I can think of that comes close.
yeah.
Because I mean, you go back further into
Other
the
films have
'90s, and you
tried.
have stuff
Yeah.
like Spawn. You know,
Well, you
It's
have
like,
'90s Captain
Mm.
America. You're forgetting the real Kino.
you have Steel starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
Which I have seen, and which is one of the worst things I have ever
It's
watched.
so
I also agree with
bad.
that. It is terrible.
Yeah, but there wasn't
no.
really like a lot of competition in terms of films like going for this look because like I think this project wanted to be done for a while, but they watched the first Robert Rodriguez watched the first Phantom Menace and thought, you know what, the technology's not there yet. But then he saw an early screening of Revenge of the Sith and basically thought to himself, we're there. Let's make this movie
Yeah.
happen. This is gonna
Yeah.
happen like right now. And he was so excited. Like there was a review with Roger Ebert that talked about like how excited Robert Rodriguez was. Like it's like digital's the future, man. You know, you don't need to spend 6 hours lighting shit. You can just, if I wanted like a house, I could just make that in a computer. And at the time, like everybody was like, okay, like this guy's like office rocker. There's no way this is gonna happen. And
Well, and
then
it's
this film
also
comes out
no, and I mean they shot this entirely on a green screen, but I
with
was
digital
also
cameras.
reading that like they would like the bandages that Mickey Rourke has on his face and all over his body, like those were actually covered in fluorescent tape,
Yep.
and so that would kind of reflect better, and it really brought out this like black and white kind of feeling. And I mean that to me was something also, and we'll get into this like later with the spirit, but one thing that I liked about this movie is like it is black and white, and like sometimes again, I'm not trying to bury the lead here too much, but sometimes you'll see movies that are trying to be black and white, but it's more like gray and white, or it's more like brown and white.
Or
like
like it's like the traditional movie black and
There's
white, but
there's
this is
really
such a unique take on black and white because the blacks are more
no, it is.
exaggerated and the whites are
Oh,
more
there's
gray.
absolutely.
really good contrast in
Hmm.
the movie.
Like I love Elijah Wood's glasses, like how they're like
Yeah.
always white from a distance, and then his face is so creepy. Like I don't know how he pulled it off. I'm like, oh, that's Frodo Baggins from The Shire. That looks like. You know that meme of like the little smiley face and the black eyes? That's basically what he looks like throughout this entire
No, and
movie. And
I mean,
I
and I'm
love like the details of like the crosses being highlighted and the whites, and it does a great job of kind of like highlighting like certain colors to show things off because making a movie like this and making it look cohesive and being able to tell what's going on, like it must have been a nightmare to manage. Like there's so much visual noise going on, but you never lose track of what you're supposed to be focusing on, despite like all the
Mhm.
special effects on the screen and little details like the fluorescent like bandages and the glasses and the crosses really do a great job of like subtly kind of nudging you at what to look at.
no, I agree with that, and I also love how that we're talking about how this compares to like superhero movies today. I love the fact that this is like Mickey Rourke, maybe in a little bit of like prosthetics, and
Yeah.
they've got like the bandages on him, but this is not like it's not using CGI to make like. I mean, you look at something like the effects from Thor: Love and Thunder or the effects from the new She-Hulk series, and it's like this came out like probably 20 years ago,
And it looks
and it
worse.
still
It somehow
looks
looks
It
worse.
looks
It
better.
has like 5 times this didn't have that high of a budget either, like only 40 million, which really isn't that much for a project this ambitious. And part of
oh,
that
Mm.
is because it was
absolutely.
done in Robert Rodriguez's own studio, which is like a 5 minute walk from his house. So he didn't have to drive anywhere. There wasn't like fees for additional workers. So it was just like, oh hey, let me just grab my lunch at home and head like straight to work because he refused to work at like a Hollywood CGI studio, and for good reason by the looks of it. They are not being
Yeah.
treated too well lately, and that's probably
Oh
part of
no.
why like a film like this
Oh,
looks bad.
They're overworked, they're underpaid, they're understaffed.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
absolutely, and they
And
expect way too much from them too quickly. Like
well,
all, yeah,
and
go on.
no, I was just gonna say like we've talked about the technical elements, but like
Yeah, let's talk about the
even
story.
no, I thought the story was great. I
Hmm.
thought like one thing that I liked was the stories all feel connected in a way.
Mm.
There are transitions to the stories that don't feel like jarring at all.
Yeah,
Which
sorry, go on.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say like it interlinks so well.
It
You feel
does.
like there is a through line with it. It doesn't feel like you're watching a series of disconnected stories. There is a thematic and a grander,
Well,
connection between all of these.
it knows exactly when to cut to the next one.
Yeah, it knows like,
But
okay, like this story's had enough, let's move on here. And we kind of alluded to Tarantino earlier, and this structure kind of reminded me a lot of Pulp Fiction, actually. Like how it
Well,
kind of like opens, yeah, how it kind of like alludes to a Bruce Willis segment at the end and ends with a Bruce Willis segment, and then it kind of cuts to like a more extreme, violent story, and then a story that just completely goes off the rails before closing off with Bruce Willis again. Like it's all of these different stories, but the structure is so airtight. Like that Bruce Willis opening is such a great like mystery because throughout the entire movie, on the back of our heads, we're thinking like, what happened to him? Did he
yeah.
die? Like, is that it? Like, why did he get shot? Why is that happening? And that's like we don't realize that thought is there, but that endorphin is kind of like on the back of our minds by the time we cut back to Bruce Willis, or like endorphin goes off. It's like, oh hey, yeah, I forgot about you. I'm happy to see you again. Like I love little teasers like that. Like it just builds engagement in a way that's like very, very subtle. And for a movie that's kind of hailed as like this violent, power fantasy of sorts, style over substance, like there's clearly like a lot of work put into like making the stories connect in interesting ways. I love how they're all thematically linked and they're kind of like twisted love stories in a way, and they all have these very bittersweet endings that kind of remind you that the system like just isn't going to be overcome. This is just a temporary victory at best. Yeah, like so much work went into like tying these stories together, and it's really, really
and the
satisfying to
script
see it
is
tied together.
the script is pretty airtight. I mean, these characters they're believable. A lot of them are kind of scummy. Like
There's not a
there's
single
not a
good person
clear
in this movie.
good guy.
There's
Yeah,
not.
No.
Absolutely.
but
But that's kind of the point of the story.
no, but that's the thing is like they're interesting. Like I want to know what happens to them, even if I don't want to like
Exactly.
spend an afternoon with them.
Yeah, like
I was
Benicio del
never
Toro's
not.
character, like he's a piece of shit, but I was like, I kind of
Yeah,
still like maybe behind protective glass. I kind of still want to like sit down at dinner with you because you're just
oh,
so
for sure.
interesting.
Yeah,
I thought like the dialogue, like a lot of it is like very hokey, very like classic noir styled, very over the top. But it again, it works.
It's definitely an homage to like the early noir films, and I think that it tries to capture and pay homage to that kind of cheesy, over dramatic kind of dialogue, and
well,
I think it does a good
Oh,
job
it
of it.
does a great job of it.
yeah, no, and you brought up like Pulp Fiction earlier, Ian, which Tarantino actually, when he made that film, his original title for it was Black Mask because that was one of the leading like Pulp Fiction magazines that had come out, back when he was a kid. And so if you look at something like Black Mask, or you look at like what is that guy like Spillane? One of those like a Raymond Chandler kind of novel or whatever. Like
Yeah, the
this is
dialogue's just like that. Yeah.
this is pretty true to form, and so it's hard to fault it when it's clearly in on the joke.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Like that's what I was leading to. Like it makes it like all the more entertaining, and there's so much
Oh, for
narration.
sure.
There's so much
And
narration, but somehow that never gets boring. And by the way,
no,
Mickey Rourke giving narration, whew, that is pure audio orgasm. Like holy crap, he's got the coolest voice for narration.
I would buy Mickey Rourke ASMR for sure.
He's
No,
just reading the instruction manual for a DVD remote.
absolutely. No, and I was gonna say this too. We were kind of talking about the performances, like
Mm.
even in the Big Fat Kill, which honestly, I feel like that may have been my least favorite of the
What's
stories.
that? The Clive Owen one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
even though that was like one of my least favorites, like I loved Clive Owen's
yeah.
performance.
It's
I
still
thought
entertaining.
he was perfect. I thought he was hilarious. Like,
Oh,
I'm
he's so,
Shelley's new boyfriend.
yeah, yeah. He's so deadpan. I love the scene of the two of them in the car, and Benicio del Toro's like dead head is just like coming back. He's just like, "Shut up, you're dead." And it's like he flips him off while lighting the cigarette, which is just fantastic. Apparently, that took like so many takes to get right because Quentin Tarantino directed that segment. It's just not surprising because that has this dark humor to a T. So I just wanted to point out there. But yeah, I'd argue that's probably the weakest segment too, but it's still entertaining. Like it never felt like the film was wasting my time. Like, spoiler alert, unlike a certain movie that's coming next. Like it's just like I'm still happy to be here. There's problems with it, there's people that really can't act, like some of the actresses playing the hookers, they weren't hired for their acting. We'll just say that. Again, I'm still entertained.
Hey, hookers are people too.
Absolutely.
I mean, it would have been nice if they could.
And it's like, okay, here's a splash of color here. Like,
it's
like,
it's so sparingly used, but it really complements the black and white.
No, that's what it is. It's sparingly used, but it's so thematically connected. It's done with a purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that too, like, holy shit.
I also would like to note the effectiveness of inner monologue when it comes to adapting comics, which typically have inner monologues. You don't see it done that often, but this film, like many noir films, tends to it uses inner monologue effectively, and not in a way that's jarring, especially when you have the monologues of so many different fucking characters. It can get out of hand, but this movie does it very well.
Well, because all the monologues feel like they have a personality too, like the way they're written.
Too. They don't sound like the same person. Like another film that we reviewed, cough cough, The Thin Red Line. It's like, the narration is not like boring. It doesn't sound like we're listening to some variation of the same character. It's like these all have their own personality, their own sort of connective tissue to the overall narrative, and I think that complements the film.
Yeah, can we all agree that Marv's story is the best one?
It is.
I
will agree. I honestly, I kind of loved That Yellow Bastard, though.
Yeah, that's a good one for
sure.
I
love That Yellow
probably
Bastard.
my close second.
I take away his weapons.
Yeah, both of them. We need to address this too, and now I know how to put this. I think Robert Rodriguez has a ball finish. Like, there is so much discussion about balls and like shooting of balls and ripping out balls, and Planet Terror had that one guy that kept like cutting off people's balls with his knife. Like, there's a lot of talk about balls. Robert Rodriguez movies. It's very strange.
Okay, I will counter that with one thing, and there's a lot of that talk in like S. Craig Zahler movies too, if you notice.
Oh, I did. He did make me forget.
No, and I think a lot of that is when you're telling a story like this that is so like rooted in sort of like machismo, just like raw, just manly men, like I feel like taking away that sort of element of masculinity, like there's a deeper reading there. Like, there feels like I'm just saying that trope has some weight in the kind of stories
I know, it was just
doing.
Bizarre. I just noticed that with him in particular.
But it fits. Like it.
Yeah. Again, it's very goofy and over the top, and yeah, it fits in that sense for sure. I would agree with The Yellow Bastard if I didn't have to watch Jessica Alba act. She is not an actress hired for her acting. Holy shit.
I don't agree with that.
Come on, she reminded me of someone from a Neil Breen movie. She was awful. Come on.
It's not that bad.
Come on. Like, when she was like, I felt so afraid and scared.
She's worse in the next one.
Yeah, and she gets more screen time too. I was like, thanks, Robert. That's exactly what I wanted.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I think she was serviceable for what she was required to do.
And I mean, she's a good dancer. She's a very pretty woman, but she can't act for shit.
The best damn dancer in Basin City.
Yeah, eyes on stage, Pilgrim. She's just warming up. The child Jessica Alba was a better actress than her. That's what my mother and I said. It's like, wow, she's better as a child.
Well, they do that thing too, where it's like you have other like bigger actors to kind of play off of her so that she comes off a little better. And that was something that was kind of, I think, maybe missing from the sequel, is like there's not that dynamic with Bruce Willis anymore. And I'm not even specifically talking about her acting. It's like she's not, I don't know that she's that interesting of a character by herself.
No,
the dynamic that she has with Bruce Willis' character
It's
is
mainly
what's interesting.
it is mainly about the relationship, which is why the story doesn't necessarily focus on her, which is why, I mean, and we may be veering into the next film a little bit, which is why she's not as effective in Dame to Kill For. It's her attachment to Hartigan, and Hartigan's attachment to her that that makes the story compelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the next film proves that she was essentially a plot device and not much more than that. And she's a good plot device, but when you take that element away, she has nothing to do. But we'll get into that.
And I think that may be more on the script than maybe her performance.
No.
But we'll get into that.
It's definitely on the script. I would say.
Yeah.
Fun fact. We are talking about Sin City, but it was pointed out to me at work a couple of months ago that Sin City and 300 are both mid-2000s Frank Miller adaptations that have lesser sequels made in 2014 that star Eva Green.
Nice coincidence. I have another coincidence to share with you. So, 300 was made around the same time, and they're both Frank Miller novels. Did you notice there were similar strategies used in both stories? Because think about it, the strategy in 300 that they use at one point against the Persians is to get all of the Persians down narrow alleyway so they can fight them off a lot easier and they can't get flanked. In Sin City, they prostitutes do the same thing in Old Town. Yeah, nice little connection there.
So, Nate, are you saying that Eva Green is a curse for Frank Miller sequels?
I'm not saying that Eva Green is a curse for Frank Miller sequels, because she is not the problem with those movies. In fact, she tends to be the best parts of those movies.
I would
also agree with that.
I wholeheartedly agree. She's a great actress. I'm kind of disappointed she wasn't in movies more.
Yeah, no, I wish we saw her more. She's a great actress. She's
even
also
when she's in total garbage, she at least tries. When no one else does.
She's in one of the worst films I've ever seen, which is Miss Peregrine's Home for Children.
Oh God,
it's a terrible movie.
But she's great.
But damn, she's trying.
She really is. That's a garbage movie.
Yeah. I really want to. There's a film that she's in called The Dreamers that I really want to see.
Yes.
I don't.
That's on my list.
Is it good? Have you seen it?
Not yet. It's on my list. I really want to though. Maybe some point on the podcast. But I think we're going a bit off topic. Sin City. It's great. What more can I say about it? Some of the performances sucked. Some of the CGI looks pretty rough. But I could never be mad at it, even at its lowest points. And it is just one of the most entertaining and visually scrumptious comic book films ever made. And giving this one a grade out of 10. It's the best Mad Max Payne movie we're ever going to get. That's my review.
Nate, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. I have a very, very fond sentimental attachment to this film. I watched it with my friends when we were in... God, was it middle school or high school? I can't fucking remember, but I have very fond memories of my friends and I watching this when we were very young, and I think that it is stylistically one of my, it's just such a beautiful film. It's got an amazing visual language to it. I think it's got really, it does have some poor performances, but I think from most of the actors that really drive the movie home, I think the performances are great. It's got that it's got that kind of cheesy hammed up acting that manages to serve the story and serve the film, and I just think that it's such a beautiful film, and because it has such a sentimental attachment to it, I have it at a 10 out of 10 just because it's just beautiful.
Damn.
Well, you know what? I am going to share your sentiment. I think this is
Damn.
a 10 out of 10. This is like
Fuck.
the perfect comic book movie. I mean, yeah, there's things I could complain about, but I too kind of have a soft spot for this film. There's the nostalgia sort of baked into it, and damn, if it didn't hold up and still deliver this many years later, yeah, I'm right there with you, Nate. I was gonna let you do it first, but yeah, wow, what a film.
I think I'm like I want to show this to my friends. I don't know if my friends have seen it.
Yeah,
you should definitely show it to them. This is like, and then you can decide if they're still your friends.
Yeah. And you know what you could not do? You could not show them Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. This was released in 2014, I believe. 2014. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For.
2014.
Yep,
the same year as 300 Rise of an Empire.
That is absolutely true. A movie made 9 years after the fact. It is based off of two of the stories are based off the graphic novel. Two of them are not. Two of them are brand new, made for the silver screen.
One of them is good.
Yes.
Yeah,
more on that. Yes. This is also an anthology series about a few miscreants, morally ambiguous characters having a long, bad night. And it's got a bunch of returning actors, but it's got a bunch of new ones as well. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Eva Green, who is just chewing up the scenery marvelously, both physically and mentally.
I'm so in love with that woman.
Oh, yeah, me too. A little bit of bias there. Josh Brolin is recast. A bunch of the old actors are recast either because the other actors had previous arrangements or they passed away. Rest in peace, Michael Clark Duncan. You have been replaced in this movie with a arguably much weaker actor, but it's going for a similar style, a similar vibe, and out of the 3 films we're talking about tonight, I found this one the most boring. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just something about this film is so dull to me, and I think a big part of that is that the returning characters just have nothing to do, and it's that classic sequelitis problem with, the characters had such like airtight purposes and arcs in the first movie, and this feels like a classic bad sequel problem where the writers just don't really know what to do with returning characters, so they just have them repeat the same beats or have them serve as like glorified ex machinas. And I could forgive some of that if the new characters were really interesting, but the new characters were just kind of so I just had nothing to attach myself to of this movie.
I liked Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. I thought he was interesting to watch. I think that they could have definitely deepened him a little bit, and
that's the problem. Like that, his story was easily the best one. Like, it's not great, but it has a lot going for it, which I can't say about the rest of the stories. But it's the shortest one. Like, why the hell would you make that story the shortest one? Like, I feel like that also could have benefited from the length, because the short has that vibe of like a long bad night that all the Sin City shorts are supposed to have, but it's over in like a few minutes. Like, I really think they should have given that story a lot more time to breathe, and they really should have cut down the Dame to Kill For story, in my opinion. Like, that story has so much padding to it. Like, it's not even funny.
Well, the Dame to Kill For is it's most of the movie.
Yeah, and it really doesn't need to be. Like, there's like a 5-minute segment of like the cops, like a 5-10 minute segment of the cop getting manipulated by Eva Green and falling in love with her. Like, why did this have to be 10 minutes? Why couldn't it have been 2 minutes? Why does this movie that is half an hour shorter than the last movie feel like it has more padding?
Well, Christopher Maloney has like a cameo, and his the Law and Order guy, Christopher Maloney.
Oh, he is,
and his entire character arc is that he's horny.
Yeah. Oh my God, his acting was so bad. Like in the car where he's just like, I will not let you talk
this movie,
to Ava.
It should also be noted that this movie had a bigger budget than the last.
It's
than
a testament to the first movie that a movie that comes out 9 years later looks worse. Like, it looks worse than the first Sin City.
Here's part of my problem, okay? Like, the thing about A Dame to Kill For being, like, the focal point of the film. So, which Josh Brolin replaces Clive Owen.
which is so bizarre. Like, you couldn't have at least cast an actor that kind of looked like him?
Okay, so in the comics, the Dwight character that Clive Owen plays
looks completely different.
He has an automobile accident, which they do in this film, and then he looks completely different moving forward. But Clive Owen wasn't available at all. So the way that this needed to be done was just do Josh Brolin, and then after the accident, you bring Clive Owen back.
Yeah.
But this movie can't do that because they don't have Clive Owen, so they just cut Josh Brolin's hair to look like
it
Clive
looks
Owen.
So bad.
And it's this weird hairpiece.
It looks like a bad cosplay.
It is so bad.
It is so bad. Like, here's the thing. You could have at least cast a different actor that kind of looked and sounded like Clive Owen. Like, Josh Brolin doesn't even sound like Clive Owen. Like, that's why that aspect doesn't work, is that he doesn't even bother trying to.
He doesn't have the same voice
at all.
No, and he's not even trying. Like,
yeah, here's the thing. Like, I was thinking, like, Men Black Free, Josh Brolin plays like a younger Tommy Lee Jones, and he mimics Tommy Lee Jones so well. Like, it's not like he can't mimic other actors, and I don't know why he didn't do it in this story. Like, I don't know why he could at least try to mimic Dwight a little bit.
I'm gonna be honest. Like, Josh Brolin, he can be kind of hit or miss.
I think he's a great actor if you know what to do with him.
If he wants to.
I don't know if I go that far.
He was also in Old Boy, which...
That's a terrible movie, though, in fairness. There wasn't much he could do to save that one.
When you have a conversation about movies that just didn't need to be made, Old Boy is...
yeah.
Well, I'm really waiting for the Spike Lee remake of Parasite, where it's just Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Oh my! Don't.
There's an American remake of a Korean film.
Please don't. God. Like this. Yeah, back to the movie. Here's the thing. Like, here's my thing. What's the point of making Dwight the character? Like, if you're gonna recast him anyways, why not just make him Josh Brolin a new character? Like, what's the point of Dwight coming back?
Because I mean, in the comics, Dame to Kill For happens right before it happens before Big Fat Kill, and they wanted to do that story.
I know that's fair, but they made changes from the comic book anyways. You think that would be like kind of an easy one, but it's just so jarring.
I feel like people would piss their pants if it wasn't Dwight at the center of Dame to Kill For.
Yeah, well, I think more people
really,
did that when
honestly,
Clive Owen didn't come back.
No, and here's the thing. Like, A Dame to Kill For, as far as the casting of Josh Brolin, it works up until the car accident.
Yeah.
I would say so.
That's the problem. Like, if you just had Josh Brolin up until the accident, it would be fine. But the fact that you kept him and tried to make him look like Clive Owen was really distracting.
Yeah, really distracting, and it just highlights how not like Clive Owen he is. Like, you could have just cast another actor that kind of looked like Clive Owen, like another British actor, like hiding an American accent. Like, that would be kind of a clever way to tie him into, like, Clive Owen for the first. It just makes no sense, and there's returning characters that don't need to be here.
Okay, so I don't want to like shit on this film. Like, it's not. I don't think it's quite as bad as like everybody makes it out to be.
I agree.
I think there are moments that have, like, there's still that sense of style. There are still moments that are like
cool
genuinely good. I would argue that like the Joseph Gordon-Levitt story, and particularly the Lady Gaga cameo, like
that was great.
That was the one moment in the film where I was like, holy shit, this is what this film is supposed to be.
Yeah,
like when she like gives him $1 and she's like, I know it's not much, baby, and he's like, oh, it's gonna take me to the moon. It's like, oh, this is the film that was supposed to be made. Like, but then the rest of it is like bizarre, and it just doesn't work. And I feel like there's two main problems with this film, and it's only a problem because it's so tied to the original by comparison. The first problem with it that I had is that the stories are not interwoven narratively in the same way.
Not
Like,
at all.
they kind of feel random.
Yeah, the structure of this movie is such a goddamn mess. Like, parts of it take place before the first Sin City, and then parts of it don't? Like, why would you do that? Like, have it all take place before, or have it all take place after? Like, pick one.
Well, and that was another thing that bothered me, because Marv is actually a part of the last story.
He's supposed to be dead!
He's
supposed to be dead!
It supposedly takes place before Hard Goodbye.
But that's so confusing.
But here's my question: Doesn't the senator tie into Hard Goodbye? So
yes, the Rourke family. Here's my problem. Here's my problem with Sin City 2. What is clearly established in Sin City 1 is that the Rourkes own Basin City.
Yeah.
And they are this, powerful, untouchable family that are, partially the reason why everything is so fucked up and why everything's so unfair and yada, yada, yada. They establish them as this, there aren't many good guys in Sin City, but, the Rourkes are definitely the bad guys. And they're the cause for most of the problems that happen in these anthologies. But
yeah, and
they completely destroy the significance, and the infallibility of the Rourke family by killing Rourke in Jessica Alba's story.
Yeah, and here's the thing: Rourke is hyped up to be
the movie.
Yeah,
it doesn't even happen in the comic.
Yeah, Rourke was hyped up to be like this powerful character. Like, the point that the first movie made is that he's untouchable. Like, the only way you could possibly damage him is to affect his ego, which is what Joseph Gordon-Levitt's story does, and another reason why that's the best one. But here's the thing: he's this powerful figure. Why can't these two people just break into his house and kill him? Like, it is so unsatisfying. We don't even get to see a shot of him dying. We don't even get to see a shot of him getting shot. Like, that's the bare minimum.
Yeah, the thing about Marv helping Nancy on her revenge quest against Rourke, which Marv in Hard Goodbye goes on and on about, he's just like, I'll be killing a Rourke, that's such a big thing. It's not a big thing if they show that he was already accessory to it in the story that they wrote for Nancy in this film.
Yeah, it also makes Bruce Willis' sacrifice pointless, because, right away he's just like, we found this broad who's been spying on you. He's like, oh, yeah, we gotta take her out. It's like, okay, so Bruce Willis' sacrifice didn't matter? Like, the whole point of his sacrifice was that he would stay away from her. So to make it so Rourke is, chasing after her again just completely nullifies, what he did in the last movie. That pissed me off, too.
Yeah, and also just, oh god, fucking damn! What would the Joseph Gordon-Levitt in his story? He beat him at cards. He has this kind of victory, but it's a Pyrrhic victory because he gets killed. But Rourke has to live with knowing that he, and also losing at cards, which is something that that is something that he never does. But that sacrifice that Johnny makes, and the significance of his small Pyrrhic victory is nullified.
Yeah,
if you kill Rourke.
It's so annoying.
Which they did.
Yeah, and here's the thing: Rourke was sorry, go on.
No, I mean, I just wanted to kind of butt in here too, because the problem is with the sequel, it's immediately after you shoot Rourke and he's dead, it pretty much cuts to black.
Yeah, it doesn't even show him getting shot.
No, that's the end, and that's kind of the problem that I have too, is well, okay, if you're gonna do this, well, wouldn't it make more sense to maybe, I don't know, show the Jessica Alba character, at what cost has she gotten revenge?
Mark's
you could
story.
At least fill that out a little bit, instead of having this whole subplot with Christopher Maloney, it's like you could do something with this where it's like, okay, she got her revenge, but now what? Like, how is the city going to react? Is she like a wanted woman? Is she going to be happy? Is this going to be enough? I'm not saying that it's the best story in the movie because it's not. I don't.
It's the worst one.
It's easily the worst one.
I don't know if it's the worst, but it's the most undercooked.
Yeah, it feels like it was just slapped on. Like it was just fan service. Like, oh, here's the death of an unlikable character. Oh, Jessica Alba's back, and she's doing more in this movie because you complained about her just being the stripper in the first movie. We got your back, guys.
well. Here's the thing: is just that I think that I just think that this movie would be considered a better movie if that story was just cut. Like the last time I watched, like the last time I watched this movie, I didn't watch that story, and I remember going, "Huh, you know what? I enjoyed watching it." Yeah, it's like when you watch Batman: The Killing Joke, the animated adaptation.
Oh,
that movie's good. That movie's good if you just skip the first 25 minutes.
And the sex scene.
Oh, God, that was so cringe.
Oh my God!
It's I watched the Killing Joke is one of my favorite comics, and I watched the movie, but I just skipped the whole first part, and then I just said, "Huh, this is a pretty straightforward adaptation of the book, and I'm happy with it."
Well, and it's so weird how that plays out too. Like it doesn't even feel like they're leaning into a sex scene. It just kind of comes out of nowhere.
And it shouldn't
it shouldn't happen, period.
It shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't happen at all, but it doesn't even happen for any justified reason.
They don't at least try to shoot it in an interesting way or give it an interesting narrative purpose. It's just here you go.
People who ship Bruce and Barbara should be hanged.
Yeah.
I'm almost well, I'm almost in agreement there.
Yeah.
It's this weird grooming kind of thing. I don't know. But anyway,
yeah, back to the movie.
Back to A Dame to Kill For.
Let's talk about A Dame to Kill For, the story that takes up so much of the fucking runtime for some reason. I get the movie's called A Dame to Kill For, but I did need 10 minutes of a police officer getting laid. That could have been done 2 minutes and we could have moved on with the fucking story. There was a moment when I paused the movie and I was thinking, okay, there's gotta be only 5 minutes left, and I saw it had half an hour left, and I about flipped the table. I'm like, good God, this movie's boring as fuck. It's so boring. And, and it's half an hour shorter, and it feels way longer. And this story is where it definitely feels like it's at its longest. I got the point of it 15 minutes before it ended.
Well, it almost, and I mean, I hate to say this, but Clive Owen couldn't come back. A lot of the characters from the original were killed off. Devon Aoki, who played Miho in the original,
she couldn't come back.
She was pregnant. They had to replace her. Michael Clark Duncan had passed away. There's a point when you're watching this, and it's did we really need this?
Yeah, I was thinking that the whole time, or at least do so many old characters need to come back. Yeah.
And here's the thing, I don't know a ton about the comics. I've read a few of them. I'm not super well versed on them. I'm just a massive fan of the movie. But I'm kind of wondering, was there not original stories from the comics that they could adapt outside of what I'm saying is, were there characters that didn't show up in the first movie that you could explore?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to retread old ground.
It's stuck between giving fan service of the original story and establishing new characters and a new setting. It can't pick between the two, and it just kind of fumbles about, and we get this complete mess of a story in its wake. And also, Eva Green's great. She's one of the best actresses in the movie, and the scene where she's oh, finally, and picks up the phone, actually made me laugh pretty hard. but like her character is so one-dimensional. It's like, oh, it's a femme fatale that wants money. Oh wow, that's like every other femme fatale in movie history. And the ending of that story pissed me off. I gotta talk about this for a second. So like, there's a scene where like she shoots somebody else, and she's like, wait, like I think like I've fallen in love with you all over again. Then Josh Brolin like hugs her, kisses her, and then shoots her in the chest. I'm like, movie, fuck you. You did not just rip off Double Indemnity. They did. It's bad they ripped off the ending of Double Indemnity, because that's what happens. Like, Norma Dietrichson shoots Fred McMurray, the character played by Fred McMurray, and he's like, at that moment, like, I fall in love with you again, and they hug and kiss, and he shoots her in the chest. And this movie did the
Damn.
same thing, but it's like, it doesn't
mean-
feel earned,
I
because
mean-
it's such an
I mean,
arbitrary, shitty version of a femme fatale story that we've already seen a billion times. Great.
Well, spoilers for Double Indemnity. I had not seen that film.
Oh,
and I
okay.
guess
It's
my
from the
fault
40s.
For not
It's from the
for
40s.
not
Come on.
seeing it since 1944. But
Yeah, I'm sorry. Minor spoilers, but there's still a lot to appreciate, even with
No,
that in
it's-
mind, in my defense.
yeah, but I mean, there's a lot to appreciate about this film. It's just it's kind of
It's
messy.
got a good
It's
cast.
not
I think.
necessary in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It just I don't know. And the other thing that I took issue with, like the brutality of these shorts are not. It doesn't seem like as urgent, because in the original there were moments of like genuine dread. Like there were moments of like suspense where
Yeah,
you're
Bruce
like,
Willis
I don't
was like
know
getting a
if
heart
this guy-
attack. Yeah.
No, I don't know if this guy's gonna make it, and I want him to make it. Or like, this guy is a real piece of shit, and I want to see him get the crap kicked out of him. Like, you didn't have that sense of urgency in this. I was kind of just indifferent for a lot of it. And it's like you took a story about the worst character of the original, and you've removed the one thing that made him so great, which is like and so memorable, which is Clive Owen's performance. And I know we keep coming back to that, but that was like that really pissed me off, because like I said, I mean, the big fat kill was probably the weakest of the originals, but like goddamn, Clive Owen was
And Rosario Dawson, like their chemistry,
feel-
like made that story work so well. And Rosario Dawson could not have any less chemistry with Josh Brolin in this movie.
Oh, it's pretty cringe.
It's
not
pretty
gonna lie.
rough.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like when you set out to make a movie, if there's a particular actor or actress that you have in mind that you really are harping on to make the film, then you should wait for them to be available to make it.
Well, there were
feel
scheduling
like-
issues,
Okay,
too, in fairness.
here's a question. Why didn't immediately after the car accident you just have like Josh Brolin in bandages and he's like out of commission? And so Rosario Dawson decides to take matters into her own
Exactly.
hands.
Like, just do that,
There's
or
so
just a
much
different
you could
actor.
do.
Or just have a different
Yeah,
actor.
there's so much that you could do with this, and it feels like a lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, man. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. There are some genuinely entertaining bits. I really liked the Lady Gaga cameo, the whole thing with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his
I-
character.
I
The-
think Joseph Gordon-Levitt's story is the best part of this movie.
It's easily the
the
best part.
opening sequence with Marv was kind of fun.
It was
I
fun,
mean,
you
but
know.
it served no purpose. It didn't have like
No,
the wow
It's-
factor
it
of
served
Six
it served the purpose of Marv's a fan favorite. We need to have a part for him in the
Yeah,
movie.
why is he in the movie? He doesn't do anything. He just helps people beat up other characters. That's all he does. That's all
Well,
he
and
fucking
that's
does.
the
Make-
other
I
thing,
mean,
too,
movie-
is,
I
like,
mean, because-
Josh Brolin makes that comment. It's like, oh, so he's gonna beat someone I want him to
Yeah,
beat
who
up. Like,
cares? Yeah, I'm just like, oh, Robert, that feels like that's just you saying that. But did you like the cast? Because I think like most of the cast saves this movie. Like, even though Jessica Alba's awful and the two police officers are awful, we haven't even talked about the guy's non-reaction to getting shot by his partner. But I think most of the cast does a good job. Like, power spoof, like, I have this in my notes where I said, I don't need food, I don't need water, I just need more power spoof chewing up the scenery. Like the guy who played the senator.
Oh,
Like
Yeah,
he is
he's
I love
so
Howard
fantastic.
good.
Stern. He's great.
He's so
I would-
like mustache twirly and over the top. Like this movie took itself too seriously, and I needed more of let's give Johnny a hand. Let's give Johnny another hand. Or the line like it's like I'm not a senator. I'm a Rourke. Like, it's so stupid, but it needed more of that stupid tongue-in-cheek nature to it, I think, that the first film had.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Christopher Lloyd was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Seeing him,
that scene was pretty funny. Yeah,
Ray Liotta was great.
yeah, it was so good.
Juno Temple. Again, I keep coming back to that like Lady Gaga moment because that was like the one moment where I was like, I get what this film wants to be. Why can't it be this the
It
whole
needed
way
more
through?
of that vibe of like The Long Bad Night or Fever Dream, like all the stories the first one had. But the pacing is like so off of the other stories. Like they take way too long, and there's weird time skips and not a good cohesive sense of time. Like even Bruce Willis in the first movie, we know he was in prison for like however many years. I forget how many years it was, but it was until Jessica Alba was 19 years old. Boom, done. I don't know how long Jessica Alba was having her fit for. I don't know how long the police officer was baiting Eva Green, which, you know, another reason I hate the cop character is that he was having sex for her and I wasn't. I was very disappointed about that.
Come on, man.
No, hey, come on. I mean,
so you're gonna get canceled now.
Hey, come on.
No,
I'm a single guy. I have needs. Sorry.
If you want to watch a policeman get laid, just watch porn.
Yeah, I'll watch. The Last Seduction.
The pizza delivery guy.
We don't have that in porn anymore. You know, we don't have like it's all about like step siblings and not the hardworking American.
Porn used to mean something.
It's the damn
pizza guy.
Porn.
Yeah, I know, right?
The pizza guy or the plumber. People with jobs. Now it's just these. Yeah, now it's just these rich, like, Chatsworth elite that are fucking their step siblings or whatever.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Back to A Dame to Kill For. I don't know. There were some cool shots. Some of the color choices were still pretty cool, despite the fact that like it looks worse than the first movie. Like it still has like a charm and a personality to it.
I mean, it still looks like Sin City. It still has the same visual aesthetic, which you got to give it some props for.
Yeah, it gives it a bit of
the
charm and personality.
Elements are still there, but they also don't incorporate the color in an interesting narrative way.
Yeah, it's just like all the redheads have red hair. What does that mean? I don't know. Like, it meant something for, like, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's girlfriend, but they kept doing it. I'm just like, why do you keep doing it? It doesn't mean anything at this point. It's just, ooh, that's a neat visual trick.
Yeah.
I don't like this movie very much. 4.5 out of 10.
I'm give this I don't know, like a 7 out of 10.
Ooh,
I feel that's probably a bit generous, but it's very okay. I have seen it now. I probably won't see it again, which I've seen the original a number of times, and I plan on seeing that again and again because I love it. This is just very okay. That's the best I can say about it.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate the first one more. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about you, Nathan? What would you give this one?
I mean, I didn't hate it. I've seen worse. There are parts of this movie that I do genuinely enjoy. So, I think I'm going to give it like a 5 out of 10. Because, I mean, it gets half.
Yeah.
It gets like half of it, right? I mean.
Yeah. I was thinking the same rating, but the more I'm talking about it, the more I don't like it. So I'm thinking 4.5 for now.
I don't blame you.
It was so dull. Like it felt way longer than the movie that was over 2 hours long. Like,
and here's the thing. Like I had planned to give this a 7 out of 10, but you guys have almost talked me out of it. I'll just join the crowd. It's more like a 5. In all honesty, I really wanted to love this movie more than I did.
Yeah, I count that too. Like I wanted to think like, okay, maybe this movie's misunderstood. Like, I'm enjoying this Joseph Gordon-Levitt segment, and even though it's dumb that Marv's here, I'm still enjoying it. But the more I was watching, the more I realized, oh no, this was
I
a
mean,
mistake.
it's I remember I had fond memory. Like my friends and I got all dressed up to go see it. We wore like our best like film noir like outfits because we were excited because we were all fans of the first Sin City, and
It's fine.
It
Like,
happens.
it's just, I don't love it, I don't hate it, but it exists.
yeah, it's just there.
It's
If I
there.
ever watch it, I'll shut it off after Joseph Gordon-Levitt's bit and think of it as a better movie than it is.
Yeah,
That is
that's
very
a good advice.
fair. Maybe the 7 that I originally planned to give it was if it didn't have the ending.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so anticlimactic. Like, it feels like they just didn't finish the movie. Like, yep, there you go. It's over, I guess. Go on, folks. Calling it early. So,
Well,
last but not least, we have the most fever dreamish film of the bunch. Steven, take it away. It's The Spirit. Holy shit, what a movie.
oh god, okay. So
I haven't seen this one actually, so this will be interesting.
I
Oh,
swear,
boy.
Nathan, just a disclaimer. If what I'm saying sounds like nonsense, that's just the movie. That's just how the movie is. I swear.
Well, it's interesting. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I know a lot about like I know that the movie was very poorly received, but it's like it's kind of unfortunate because The Spirit was created by a guy named Will Eisner, who like they have like who is so highly regarded in the comic book world that they even named like I mean the comic book equivalent of the Oscars is the Eisner Awards, which is
Yep.
and I think it's kind of unfortunate that one of his most notable creations is such a flawed adaptation.
yeah, so this was made in 2008. This was obviously a very hot commodity. A lot of people in Hollywood have been interested in this film for quite some time. William Friedkin, who we talked about when I was on the podcast last, we reviewed The Exorcist. This was going to be Friedkin's follow-up to The Exorcist. He wanted to do a faithful adaptation of the comics to be released on like a made-for-TV movie, basically kind of tapping into the same market and potential of the very first Superman movie, which Superman kind of came out around 1978, and the 60s Batman movie had been really popular, and so or the TV show at least with Adam West. So this was kind of a natural sort of jumping on point for Friedkin, who tried to get Eisner on board to write the script. He was not interested. I don't know if it was mainly just a schedule thing, or maybe he just wasn't ready to kind of transition to film from comics. But that fell through. Brad Bird, who we know as one of the sort of heads of Disney and Pixar there for a while.
Honestly, not a bad director.
Yeah, also The Iron Giant, Ghost Protocol, a couple of other things that he's done.
The Incredibles.
Yeah, he had tried to do The Spirit at one point. There was a pencil test back in the 80s that, was kind of shot as like a trailer. And none of these adaptations managed to come to fruition. There was eventually one version of this film that came out in 1987. It was written by Stephen D'Souza, who would go on to write Die Hard a year later. This was not very memorable. It starred Sam Jones, aka the Flash Gordon guy.
Jones? No fucking way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need to see this movie now.
Yeah, so if you guys have seen Ted, he's the coked up action hero. But no, I mean it was kind of forgotten about until 2008, which is just let's see here, 3 years after the success of Sin City. Frank Miller decided he was going to go this one on his own with no involvement from Robert Rodriguez. It is a 100% Frank Miller film, for better or for worse.
Mostly for worse.
This film stars Gabriel Mott, who would go on to have a much better career in Suits. Thankfully not remembered for this.
Thank God.
Sarah Paulson, Scarlett Johansson, and Samuel L. Jackson pre-Avengers.
How could this go wrong?
And Eva Mendes, who is literally my wife, because I'm literally Ryan Gosling. No, it's... So what is it about? Well, it's the story of a ghost-like superhero who has risen from the grave and has to defend the city from the octopus. And by the way, everybody wants to have sex with him. That is basically every woman in this movie, their character arc is that they are horny for the spirit. I swear to God, that's the most you get. And by the way, when I say the octopus, I don't mean an actual octopus. We're not talking about some Godzilla creature.
I figured.
Damn.
This is Sam Jackson giving his all into this performance.
Yep, I agree with that.
Where to begin?
This movie, I watched this movie late at night, and I'm still not convinced this wasn't an elaborate fever dream. I just, everything about it. Let's start with the dialogue. That they claim to be written by a human, but I don't think it is written by a human. No, what I think happened is that Frank Miller made an AI program, forced it to watch 100 different superhero movies that came out around that time, pre-generate a script, and then they put that script in the movie without any changes whatsoever and said, yep, there you go, there's the script to this movie.
I'm gonna kill you all kinds of dead.
Oh my God. They repeat things.
Line of dialogue.
Yeah, and I need to address something real quick. There's so much about that's bad. Nobody talks like a person. Everybody kind of talks the same, like, hokey, shitty, forced, noirish dialogue that feels like it's trying to recapture Sin City, but it fails miserably at doing so. They repeat things over and over and over again. Steven, that's pretty damn weird. Isn't it pretty damn weird? Yeah,
no,
it's pretty damn weird.
but toilets are always funny.
Yeah, the humor is it's not even humor. It feels like a robot pre-generating humor. Like, isn't that hilarious? He then rips off his pants and the girls go tee-hee. Isn't that hilarious? Like, it's so bizarre.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I wanna say here. Man. Yeah, so no, it's bad. It's the best way that I know how to describe this is like, does anyone remember Joel Schumacher's like Batman and Robin?
How could
like
you?
Unfortunately.
With the bat nipples and everything?
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so yeah. So imagine something that like cheesy and corny and just goofball like bad, but then you play it completely deadpan serious and shoot it like a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah, exactly. The tone of this movie is so wild. Like, so wild. Like, there's a scene where he's talking to Eva Mendes and, like, she's naked and it's a pretty serious conversation about her getting arrested and her motivations. Literally 2 minutes later, we have jokes about him hanging in the air, and everyone's like, oh, isn't that dumb? More like the spirit can't climb, am I right? It's like, oh, God, one of these days. I'm like, we literally went from, like, an adult noir movie to 90s 101 Dalmatians in the span of 2 minutes. And that is the tone of this movie.
101 Dalmatians.
Yeah,
It's
the one with Glenn Close. Like, the humor is on par with that. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, it doesn't have tonal whiplash. It's tonally bipolar. Again, it feels like it was made on a computer. And the computer just didn't know what it was doing because it was a computer from the late 2000s.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I have to. there are like a couple of things that I like about this movie. Honestly, I think the cast they try.
I disagree.
I mean,
Samuel Jackson is the only one who tries in this entire movie. Nobody else could give a fuck about being in this movie.
Samuel Jackson
was terrible in this.
Who?
Like she feels like she has a gun to her head in
Eva
every
Mendes?
scene that
Yes.
she's in.
And the lead. Oh my god. There are blocks of wood. There are blocks of concrete. There are blocks of concrete surrounded by blocks of wood. And then there's this guy. He is one of the most boring, bland, wooden characters ever. And I don't even blame the actor for that. Yeah, every actor's like that.
Everyone wants to have sex with him.
Yeah,
don't you understand? That's his character.
What do
Like,
the women see in
even
him?
even the Angel of Death is
Wants to
horny
fuck
for
him. Yeah, like what do they see in the spirit? What do they see in him?
Perhaps he could have been a literally me if you know.
Yes.
Yeah, he's an OC for Frank Miller. Like, that's who he is. Like, why do they even want to fuck him? Like, is it the sex? Is it because he's dark and mysterious? Like, what is it? Give me something, movie.
It's also, I mean, it's also worth noting there was some, like, behind-the-scenes trivia, and I was reading that at one point, Frank Miller was supposed to say action, but he said cut. And the reason he screwed up was because he was so distracted by Paz Vega and her belly dancing outfit, which makes a lot of sense about this whole movie.
Yeah.
Speaking of ridiculous costumes,
Samuel L.
Jackson.
What is with his hat at the beginning is fabulous, like the weird curved sombrero. He dresses up like a samurai for some reason. He dresses up like a black samurai, and then
he also dresses up like Hitler.
Black Hitler. That is a statement that could be said about. It wasn't. I read Into the Spirit. I'm just like, okay, there's no way the octopus is like that. Sure enough, no. The octopus is supposed to be like this, Dr. Claw kind of manipulative behind-the-scenes villain that uses like his brain and his wits to defeat the spirit.
Never, like they never show his face in the comics.
Yeah, like that's kind of cool. They should have like played into that, but here he's like, no, and the black guy in a Nazi costume, like it feels like something out of Black Dynamite. Yeah,
like,
it feels like a joke.
And I don't know how in on the joke this movie is.
It's not.
It's
not. It tries to be funny. Oh boy, does it try to be funny, but it also takes itself really seriously. There's an awful flashback with two teen actors that can't act for shit, and it's played super straight. And there's a moment in that where, so the uncle shoots a cop and shoots another guy that was firing at him. They kills himself, and the daughter of that, woman related to that uncle, goes to that and says, "Fuck cops." Why would you assume the cops did that? The gun is in his hand. So the cop shot him, shot himself, and the gun conveniently fell out of his hand and landed. What the fuck? It's just there so she can hate cops. So, like, it's so contrived.
You're also forgetting that young girl grows up into the femme fatale villain who's Eva Mendes. And there's literally this whole subplot where the spirit goes around town asking people if they've seen her ass. And it's
funny.
Sorry, what?
It's so funny because butts are funny.
No. So she sits on like a photocopier and it makes a picture of her ass and it's left at a crime scene. So then he has to go around town and like ask people if they've seen her ass. And what's even funnier is that, like, they have a little person who's like, I've seen that. It's like, it's so bizarre. It's like a Martian came down to Earth and tried to write what it thinks human interaction would be,
Exactly.
or what a Martian would think of a 1940s noir movie.
Yeah, like this
It
is
is
what humor is,
so
right?
it is so bizarrely,
Yeah.
like, it reaches self-parody, and I don't know that was the intention.
It was not. I will guarantee that. It's not boring. I'll give it that. It's
No,
fascinating in the
I
same
won't.
way you watch the same way watching a
Train
dying
wreck.
animal is
Yeah.
fascinating. Like it reminded me a lot of B movie in the sense that I just had a constant sensation of why did you make this? And how did nobody realize while making it that none of it makes any sense and that none of it works? And I read it to the behind the scenes, and apparently, like, nobody has negative things to say and everybody had a good time. But I'm kind of wondering if that was the problem. And I'm not implying that films should be a bad time necessarily and that you shouldn't feel comfortable, but I think there is a problem with
No.
being too comfortable and not putting yourself out there enough and never saying no to anything that's given to
Well,
you.
I mean,
And I feel like that's
I've
what happened
never.
here.
No, and I mean, here's the thing. I've never been. I've never been a fan of, like, the Kubrick method, where
No, me
you, like,
neither.
I've never utilized that in anything I've tried to do, and I just, like, I have problems with that as a whole. But, like, there's also something to be said for, like, you do want your actors to show some effort,
Yeah.
and I feel like, and Eva Mendes even said, like, I just loved Sin City. Like, I loved that movie, and I had always wanted to work with Frank, and it was like this came up, and, like basically the impression I got was, like, she would have done anything just to work with him. I feel like, so it's like he could have pitched a commercial for mayonnaise or whatever, and like, which I get. I understand if you're, like, a fan of someone, maybe you're not going to have the same reservations about doing something or looking at something objectively, which, again, Sin City is like this modern masterpiece. So I get where she was coming from, but it's like, man,
There's a limit.
this is messy. It's very messy, and it's like, I agree with you though. I was never bored. I
I
had
was just in awe
almost
of it the entire time.
I had almost as much fun with this as I did Dreamcatcher and a couple of other really bad movies that we've
Yeah,
reviewed
that's
on
true.
here. It's bad in a way that, like, defies all reason. Everything was there.
Fascinating.
Everything could have gone right,
Yeah.
and somehow everything went wrong horribly.
Nathan, do you know who Bill Pope is?
I've heard the name before.
He shot The Matrix and Spider-Man 2 and lots of great movies.
Okay.
Do you know who shot this movie?
Oh, please don't tell
Bill
me it was
Pope!
Bill Pope.
Bill Pope shot this movie and it looks like shit! The movie looks like shit!
I love the
Yeah.
love the phenomena of acclaimed cinematographers directing something that you wouldn't expect them to direct. Like, one of my favorite surprise cinematographers is well, first let me look up the name because I can never remember it. But oh yes. So, are you familiar with Emmanuel Lubezki?
He shot Cat in the Hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know about that one.
Yeah.
That's a classic, iconic example. Like seeing Alexander Payne have a writing credit on Jurassic Park 3. Like, it just gives you a shock reaction. And here's the thing, like, some of the shots look kind of cool, but most of it just looks like an ugly mess because it all feels so uncoordinated. Like, it's black and white, but then it's also not. Then it's in full color, but it's kind of in full color, and shots are red for some reason, but there's no coordination. There's no emotional resonance for being that way. It's just Frank Miller thought that looked cool.
It's barely even, like, it's somehow less narratively cohesive than what A Dame to Kill For was. Like, I mean,
just about as much sense.
No, and well, I mean, but it's also, like, it's not even black and white. It's, like, kind of gray and brown.
But then
and
it
white.
also isn't. Like it
And
makes
it kind of looks awful, and I mean like none of the choices made in this feel purposeful,
it all feels very
which is
slapped together.
yeah, which is weird because you have Bill Pope, and we talked about this too with like when we reviewed Dreamcatcher, which was another really hilariously bad movie. um, but that was shot by the same cinematographer
It
as
looks
Mad Max
okay.
Fury Road,
Yeah.
which you watch and you're like, wait a minute, like,
Yeah.
and
Dreamcatcher
it
looks
just
better
goes,
than this.
it just goes to show. I mean, you had all the right ingredients, but there's not the execution, at least in a in a way that isn't like I have to keep watching this. This is a train wreck, and it's like
Yeah, and it had a higher budget too than Sin City.
yeah,
Like a way higher budget. Like I think it just goes to show that Frank Miller should not be directing something on his own, and he sure as hell should not be writing something on his own. But I don't blame him for that. I blame the
well,
AI
and
program that he used to write it.
after you watch Sin City, and it's like a masterpiece. It's like 10 out of 10. Holy shit, this is incredible. And then you watch A Dame to Kill For, and you're like, this is kind of like a 5 out of 10. I don't know. This like there's something here, but I don't know. And then you watch The Spirit, and it's like you just wonder
What
if
happened?
maybe you wonder if maybe the first Sin City was like lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, and this movie is stuck between
it's
like it wants to appeal to Sin City fans, so like it tries to have like that like noir edge to it and all of these gorgeous women and all of this serious monologuing, but it also wants to please like Eisner fans, so it's also really goofy and silly. But it's like what you said with Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg with AI, even though I disagree with that case, it feels like something similar to what you said, where the styles do not work. Like they're constantly clashing with each other, and he should have just
oh, they
either
definitely
he
are.
should have gone full Sin City 2 or full Goofy Spirit. Like pick one. Don't flip flop between the two just to
Yeah,
find a
pick
comfortable
a
middle ground.
struggle, man.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
and here's the thing too. It's like when I mean, in the Spirit comics, and I don't know. Obviously, I don't want to speak ill of Will Eisner. He's unfortunately passed away. But one of the complaints that the original comic series had um, was that there was a character, I believe, who was named like Ebony White, and it was a sort of a black younger child character who would kind of help the Spirit along the way. I think he was like one of the old school newsboys, and he would kind of assist him in kind of like a Batman and Robin sort of way. And unfortunately, because the Spirit came out in the 40s and 50s, and I'm not trying to insinuate anything about Eisner, but a lot of people have looked back at that character, and he wasn't drawn in the most culturally sensitive kind of way. It was a little bit of an offensive stereotype, and Frank Miller, to his credit, did try to just remove the character entirely. He decided that basically the Spirit would still work if he's kind of this lone wolf, Batman, instead of
I work
Batman and
alone.
Robin.
Yeah. You know what
And
this?
so,
You know what it's
but
like? The Incredibles. You know, should have directed this instead. Brad Bird.
well, but man, I just like I mean, it shows you that he was trying, and I give him credit for trying. There was effort, there was an attempt. I mean, like I said, he was at least mindful of the source material, was trying to update it. I don't know, man. This should have been a William Friedkin film or a Brad Bird film. This should not have been a Frank Miller film.
He's not cut out for it at all. It's just, and again, they repeat things over and over again. We haven't even talked about the triplets, who are some of the least funny comic relief characters in history.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When you do that trope of like the comic relief twins, like the fun
The
of doing that,
bumbling.
yeah, the bumbling idiots. The fun of doing that is that you cast two different actors. Like, think like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or the police officers from Adventures of Tintin, or the Weasley brothers. The fun of those characters is that they're different actors trying to talk the same, but because they're different actors, they could put their own spin on the dialogue and how they deliver the lines, despite like the similar accents. Like, that's the fun of doing like twin actors. But when you have them all be the exact same actor and the exact same character and talk exactly the same and make the exact same jokes, it doesn't work nearly as well, and it just comes off as
we
like,
also
look at
haven't even
what we could do with technology. They all look the same and they're in the same room. Crazy.
well. Okay, so we haven't even talked about that. Those characters are like clones.
Yep.
And there's one sequence where like they try to grow a new one in a lab,
What
and
the
it's
fuck
just
was
a
that?
guy's head on a foot.
That's pretty damn weird, and we're gonna say it's pretty damn weird 2 more times.
You know, there are 12 producer credits on this movie.
Yep.
12.
Yeah.
That feels about right.
There feels like there feels like wow. There needed to be at least one competent director, and I don't know. Maybe the script is not great. Maybe if you had someone, I don't know. Like
Get
if
like
there's any
Phil
way to
Lord
save
and
this.
Chris Miller to do like an adaptation of The Spirit. Like, have him write it and direct it. And with Sony
Yeah.
Pictures Animation, it'd be so good. I think they'd nail it. Or
Sure.
have Brad Bird
I
do it.
just Yeah, I mean, I don't even mind this being a live action thing. I think like the prospect of like a William Friedkin, especially coming off of The Exorcist, trying to do something like this would be fascinating. I think that would work. I don't know, man. I mean the story from the comics, there's something there. There's something that you could translate to some kind of adaptation. But this doesn't even feel like an adaptation. This feels like Frank Miller like rewriting everything in his own kind of like fan fiction.
Yeah, it feels like he made a cool OC that he could attach himself to, the main character.
Yeah.
And that's it. He is the most bland
It's
block of wood
Frank
imaginable.
Miller's literally me. It's
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't want to watch you jerk yourself off for an hour and a half. I want to watch a movie. Thank you very much.
okay. There's also because we haven't even talked about like Samuel L. Jackson. His character is that he loves eggs.
Why?
Like he's always
I have
making these
egg on my
egg-related-
face.
These egg-related puns. And by the way, they don't even make mention of the fact that he's called the octopus. Like, they don't explain why that is, which if you're going to show his face, like, you should at least give him some kind of, like,
Cool
why
appearance.
does he, where is that coming from? And it kind of feels like an afterthought because in the last 20 minutes, he's like, oh, I own 8 of everything. Like, where did that come from? Why haven't we seen this before? Does he have 8 Nazi uniforms?
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, I paused at a certain point in the movie, and I was thinking, I'm only like 20 minutes in. It's not a big deal. I'll go like use the washroom or whatever. And I was an hour into the movie. I'm like, that's not possible. Nothing happened. Like I don't know any of the characters. I don't know anything about the setting we're in. I don't know any reason. Like, why would she care about anything that's happening? It's amazing that you could spend an hour and completely waste my time. Like, it completely just not do anything with anything. And it's fascinating.
Can we talk about how like Samuel L. Jackson, when he's dressed up as like Afro Samurai, he splits one of the goons in half,
he
and
makes
how bad that effect looks.
Yeah, oh my god! And he makes one of his goons torture himself. Like, the humor goes. Sorry, go on.
No, he takes the samurai sword and splits him in half, and I swear to God, it looks like they made that in clip art.
Yeah,
like it looks like an MS Paint.
so much of this movie looks like MS Paint. Like a few of the effects are kind of decent, like the tie silhouette was kind of cool, but there were so many effects that looked like they were just copy and paste at the last minute. And like,
I will argue
Sorry, go
that the sequences with the Angel of Death, those genuinely looked really good.
they look kind of cool too. Yeah, it's a
That-
little
I
bit
would-
dated,
I would
but
say
wasn't
those were-
obnoxiously so.
Those were like the only moments that I was like, okay, yeah, that looks pretty cool.
That
I
looks
like
fine.
the look of that, you know. And then it was like, then you had the moment where it's
Then we get
like
to Samuel Jackson as cartoon guns that look like shit. They look faker than like the mask.
Well-
They look faker than like the fake guns from the mask.
well. So if Samuel L. Jackson has 8 of everything, does that make him the Hateful Eight?
Yay!
Okay, anyway.
You did it. I'm giving this steaming pile of shit a 2.5 out of 10. I'm done with this fucking movie.
Damn.
I'm gonna give it a 6.9.
What?
Because this is the most meme movie I've ever seen.
Okay, I was gonna say.
I can't even rate it seriously. I mean, holy shit. Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Well,
I really gotta watch this now.
you know what?
absolutely
Do it.
It is
fascinating.
astoundingly, fascinatingly bad. Like,
Yeah.
it's
like
impressively
B-movie.
bad.
It's just I don't know why it exists in any monicum or form. Like it was handed to the wrong person. It was handed to the wrong cast. They're not bad actors, but they're so miscast as these characters. Nothing about it works. And it's shot by Bill Pope, and even he couldn't save it when he could save the Matrix sequels.
Well,
Yeah.
Rest in peace, the spirit.
Yeah, rest in peace, the spirits. Maybe try again with better adaptation. And thank you, Stephen and Nathan, for joining me tonight. Devin, if you're listening to this, we love you, buddy. But please show up for the next episode where we're talking about Wanted, the Transporter,
the Boondock Saints,
and the
and the
Boondock
Transporter.
Saints.
oh my
Yeah.
god, I love Wanted.
Oh,
Easy Action is the name of our next episode. That'll be next week. Same spirit time, same spirit channel. And thank you so much for having me. It's been real.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing me on as well. I'm glad
Absolutely. Our apologies to Devin. We ran out of time. And thank you, everybody. Good night. Stay tuned for Conan.
and is it first day yet? Take care, guys.